Yeah? Okay.
If I will introduce you. Welcome back from the coffee break. We have 25 to 30 minutes for the paper, and I will show you like 5 minutes or 2 minutes. My name is Anna, I'm at the University of Helsinki. And here we have the presenter, who's Armin Khameh from the University of Sheffield. And the title of the paper is Toleration as Recognition for Toleration as Elimination of Misrecognition.
So, I'm going to talk about the Galati's thesis of toleration and recognition. So it's mostly an interpretive work rather than a theory. So, analysis of the Galati in 2002 book, which is called Toleration and Recognition, has developed a rather ambitious thesis which aims to incorporate the intellectual insights and theoretical tools pioneered and advanced by recognition theories into actually the theory of toleration. So the outcome of Galati's theoretical enterprise is known by the title of her book, Toleration as Recognition, or I shall call it that. So, the central claim of Galati's thesis is that naive liberalism and its associated accounts of toleration are not efficient enough to fulfill the liberal promise of a society in which all citizens are treated as equal and enjoy full inclusion. That is, on Galati's account, due to the fact that the classic account of toleration fails to address properly the problematic case of intolerance in contemporary society. So actually, David's talk was very illuminating because I think it could be one of those examples. So Galati gives examples like the hijab case in France or gay marriage, and I think the issue of the ban on minarets in Switzerland would be another case of problematic, or what she calls a genuine case of intolerance in our society. The task of the recognition-based account of toleration, as formulated by Galati, is to establish a semantic extension from the negative sense of non-interference to the positive sense of acceptance and recognition. So what she thinks is wrong, basically, she thinks that the liberal account of toleration works based on naive distinction between private and public, and then this negative account of non-interference, which was emergence in early modern era in the religious part of Europe. So the idea that if we have a separate public domain from the private sphere, and then the state being neutral and not interfering with the matter of religious or any other private issues, then the problem is going to be solved. The attempt to incorporate recognition into a theory of toleration, as is intended by the thesis of toleration as recognition, gives rise to the worry, the conceptual incompatibility of toleration with recognition. So today, particularly, I'm going to discuss this worry and to say, actually, to try to refute it. The worry goes out as follows. On the one hand, toleration conceptually requires a negative judgment of the object of toleration. So I think there is an argument often that toleration only comes to the picture when there is a negative judgment, whether moral or non-moral judgment, that's another question, but it must be this component. And on the other hand, recognition seems to require some kind of positive evaluation of the object of recognition, or a positive appraisal of the inherent worth of the content and has. And after examining this worry, I will try to proceed by offering or suggesting an alternative reading of Galati which could resist this criticism. The way I'm going to structure this, like first I try to actually put forward forward the criticism, what I call the conceptual incompatibility criticism, and then I try to actually have some kind of counter arguments, and then I move forward to develop my reading of it, which I call it toleration as elimination of this recognition. So, as I said, toleration, Galotti believes, requires first a spatial extension from private to the public domain, and second, a semantic extension from the negative meaning of toleration to the positive sense of acceptance and recognition. Galotti's thesis of toleration as recognition entails the assertion and the recognition of mutually ascriptive collective identities linked to the excluded, marginalized, or invisible groups inhabiting contemporary democracies. What is troubling with the semantic extension of toleration, as it were, extended so as to cover more positive recognitional concept of toleration, is that it seems to be incompatible with the other component of Galotti's thesis, which is recognition. Recognition seems to require some kind of positive appraisal or evaluation of the content which is at hand, and seems to be incompatible with the what is known in the literature as objective component of toleration. The very fact that first and foremost we need to have some objection, moral or non-moral objection towards something in order to later tolerate it. Without this conceptual component, we cannot talk about toleration. So, and so I don't really spend that much time on the conceptual analysis of toleration, which I think pretty much is accepted, but maybe later on we can discuss it. So this is the problem. This is the problem that Jones in his paper tries to push forward. To say that Galotti at the end is going to fail because it's somehow impossible to see these two rather conflicting concepts together in a theory. Well, so in order to refute Peter Jones' criticism or the conceptual incompatibility criticism in general, I think Jones or anyone who holds this position needs to prove two premises. The argument actually is built up on the two premises. First, Galotti's conception of toleration is fully coincident with the liberal conceptual scheme of toleration which encompasses negative judgment. So this is the first premise. And the second premise, the recognition in Galotti's thesis stands for the positive evaluation of the content. So, I want to say that basically neither of these premises are true. Neither Galotti is committed to a conceptual scheme of toleration which requires negative judgment. So, no, her account of recognition requires positive evaluation. And I just should say that the very fact that Galotti's thesis could resist Jones' arguments doesn't mean that Galotti is successful in establishing a theory of toleration. That's the other thing. So I think she could perfectly resist this criticism, but there are other issues that Galotti fails to meet, basically. So I'm not going to touch on that issue, but just to stick with my talk. So I've got two rejoinders. The first one is the methodological rejoinder, which concerns with the first premise, and second, the misrepresentation rejoinder, which tries to review the second premise. The methodological rejoinder basically says that Jones criticizes Galotti based on a conceptual scheme of toleration, which is refutation or revision or maybe radicalization is basically the point of Galotti. So what Galotti wants to do is to first and foremost revise, or I think she calls radicalize, this naive account of toleration, which Galotti thinks today doesn't really work for our society or even more fundamental premise that it's already covered by the discourse of rights. So when the discourse of toleration emerged in the modern era, it didn't have this discourse of right and the consolidation of this discourse in the constitutional rights. So once we have all those things, it seems to be redundant to talk about toleration, leave alone the some conceptual problem that arise about it. So Gallaudet first and foremost tries to, as it were, rescue the account of liberal toleration by radicalizing. So basically, she thinks that the issue of toleration is not anymore the issue of moral disagreement, as it were, for example, in the case of religious belief or other cases that you might think that's problematic, because those problems are covered by rights. What is important in our society is the construction of the minority's identity, which she thinks are related to the issue of power asymmetries and power relations and domination and marginalization that which I'm going to talk about later. So, to just conclude my first argument is that basically Jones is not right to attribute something to Gallaudet which she's not committed to, or against the background of which she tries to develop a theory, which is a classic notion of toleration, which works on the matter of moral disagreement. So it's not a matter of disagreement or moral judgment, it's a matter of solving the problem or the questions which are come through because of the injustice in society, because of the power relations and hierarchies. So this is the first criticism, the refutation of the first premise, and the second one, which is again mostly interpretive one, which is the misrepresentation of Gallaudet's conception of recognition by Jews or those people who are holding the same view. Basically, it's very clear in Gallaudet's work that she wants to distinguish herself from that account of recognition which requires positive evaluation. So we'll just give you a quote: public recognition with the aim of legitimating the public presence of diversity is content independent. So it's not something about the content of the consideration. It's dependent on the content, whatever it is. It neither says nor implies that the difference in question is intrinsically valuable, beautiful, or important for the human being. And I think in various places, so I'm not going to take your time with the different quotes. Just I want to emphasize the point that John misrepresents Gallaudet's account of recognition. Okay, so I think I'm done with the first part, and but in the original paper actually there is another bit which I have skipped over because I think again it's more like interpretive, that we might say that okay, if it's not recognition about the content, someone might say that it's about as a some phrases that might be kind of recognition of the citizenship or humanity in general, or what's called recognition account of the state. So that's not, we are not dealing with the content or the beliefs itself, but recognizing the humanity itself or the citizenship itself. But I want to say that she doesn't mean that either, and it's very clear in her work. So anyway, so just move on. So Gallaudet insists that recognition should be accorded, not despite one's origin, culture, skin color, or sexual preference, but precisely because of such issues. That, and also that recognition works only if it is granted to particular identity. It must be granted to each difference separately. And finally, that we achieve toleration as recognition when the public presence of minority identity is publicly declared acceptable, not just the public presence of individual members as individuals, but with their full-blown identities, customs, and ways of life. So I just gave you a few illustrations from Gallaudet's work. It seems that, okay, if Galotti means all this, it seems to be very unclear because it seems to be that she implies some positive evaluation, which was kind of implicit in these quotations. And it is not that, it is how we are going to understand Galotti. What does recognition basically mean in Galotti's thesis of toleration as recognition? I would say that in order to find out what Galotti basically means, we need to look at some of the conceptual categories she works with in order to proceed and in order to actually articulate her thesis. So the category of minorities, the category of inclusion, and the category of liberal category of basically participation or full participation of all individuals or citizens in society. Of course, the category of injustice, which for her is somehow tantamount to the exclusion and the exclusion of minorities. So, the fundamental form of injustice to which toleration as recognition is a response is the exclusion of minorities. By exclusion, I refer to violation of citizens' right to participate in the significant matters of polity on the same footing with others. Galotti believes that there is a causal relation between categorization of people into different minority categories and their inability to fully claim their right to inclusion. Full inclusion requires a set of capabilities that enable the individual to function as a citizen, that is, as a member of the socio-political order. In a society in which the identity of minority is ascribed to them by the dominant majority, minorities will inevitably fail to actualize the capabilities necessary for the full participation in the socio-political affairs of the polity. So, as you see, this is a causal relation between the exclusion, construction of minority, and justice. In order to clarify these categories, I first start with the category of minorities. For her, first and foremost, minorities are not defined in a numerical way. The fact that minorities are, for the most part, outnumbered by the majority is not definitive of a minority group. For example, in South Africa, the fact that black people were actually numerically more than white people did not prevent the white from considering them as minority, or actually they were minority in a kind of like Galotti understanding of minority, because it's all about the perception of attainment of people by the power, which is going to be the second thing. Minorities characteristics are ascriptive. So, Galotti is not very clear what ascription means, because more or less we consider all the identities, not all, but most of the identities are ascriptive in a general sense. But by ascription, I think I take her to mean that a kind of more severe case of ascription which happens in the kind of power relationship, unless she wants to argue that all identities basically are ascriptive. Right, just really decide what she's not clear about. Right? That is to say that minority identity is a cluster of ascriptions held together by the imposition of majority power. What puts a group in a minority position is its power to define what is normal and proper in a political order. The majority sets and upholds what Galotti called societal standards and conventions. Minorities are therefore those groups that are seen as different, and defined by the majority, relating to the social norm defined by the latter. So, what Galotti calls minorities are in fact collective identities generated by different forms of misrecognition in political order. This is what I want to emphasize, is that I have picked the name of misrecognition. Basically, it means that minority identities are the construction of various forms of misrecognition. The way that minorities or the member of those minorities are perceived by majority. And this is maybe the name for misrecognition. And what is problematic with misrecognition is that misrecognition is going to exclude some segments of population as minorities. It makes them to not, the damage their self-relation understanding, self-respect, self-esteem, so these various forms of problems that developed by recognition theorists who are not really getting with, but I think the claim is that basically this misrecognition would lead into some kind of marginalization and exclusion, which is very unjust. And what is the problem of this? So for her, it seems to me that toleration, first and foremost, prior to anything else, is the problem of these minorities, the problem of misrecognition. Right? In order to actualize the promise of liberal society, liberal order, which is the equality of all citizens, we need to eliminate this misrecognition. And this is what Galotti actually pursued. And if you want to, I actually use the ridiculous part, that is the problem. The equality for Galotti is not a matter of non-interference. It's not a matter of neutrality. So the way actually David Miller the problem. The problem of making minorities is not just the moral disagreement. It's not the problem that we can sit and argue each one has a better argument. The problem is that the way Muslims are perceived in the European society it's the same as lots of prejudices, misrecognitions, and problem they perceive. It's not a matter of misrecognition, and equality is not the liberal equality is not about people being treated by the state equally as a neutral the theory of neutrality of the state put forward. It's a matter of being able actually to actualize the capabilities in order to fully participate in the society. And in the significant matter of the society, which is somehow for those who were in the Serena's time, it's kind of similar to what Armin means by the right to have right to participate in society, or having or actually effective and or our words meaningful to the other. And there are a lot of things that in a society in which we live, and there are various forms of misrecognition because of our relation, this is not going to happen. This is because this minority would not be heard. These minorities already have lots of prejudice against them. Whatever they say is going to be interpreted in a different way. In the framework actually be ascribed to them. Or using Appiah's terms, this minority's identity is a kind of a script already written for them. Right? Already written and ascribed to them, and they only could basically play it out on the scene of politics, which is already, scripted. It's already shaped by the majority's understanding what is right or wrong, or what they like to be normal or proper. Right. So I think actually I'm kind of done. Just to conclude, again, I think Galotti is not committed to the account of recognition which requires positive evaluation, and basically her account of toleration does not fit into the traditional or classic conceptualist meaning of toleration either. Whether what she means is an account of toleration, and I'll say something else, because I think basically she doesn't mean toleration, she means something else, and at the end, I think her account itself falls into the realm of right, and I think in that case is redundant and also conceptually inconsistent, but that's other issue. But insofar as Jones's criticism or the conceptual incompatibility criticism is concerned, I think if we read or interpret Galotti's account of recognition as elimination of misrecognition, as elimination of all those forms of exclusion, marginalization, and injustice, then one could say that her account is not conceptually inconsistent. So both recognition and toleration are not conceptually incompatible because recognition basically means elimination of disrecognition.